"Doctors, what's the most heartbreaking case you've ever seen? I'm a pediatric oncologist and I still think about this kid Jeremy every single day. He was 12 years old when his brain tumor came back for the third time. At that point, we all knew there was nothing left we could do. Most kids his age would be crying, screaming, asking why this was happening to them. But Jeremy, this kid was different. He showed up to chemo with joke books and made the nurses laugh when they were having the worst shifts of their lives. When other kids were scared to get their blood drawn, Jeremy would crack jokes about being a human juice box. But what really got to me was when he asked for a meeting in my office, just him and me. He sat in that big chair, feet barely touching the floor, and pulled out this crumpled piece of notebook paper. It was a list written in pencil with those big kid handwriting letters. He said he needed to talk to everyone on that list before he died. Not fun stuff like going to Disney World or meeting celebrities, just people. His third-grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, who taught him how to read chapter books. His sister, Emma, who always stole his Halloween candy but shared her birthday cake with him. The school bus driver who let him sit in the front seat when kids were being mean. Even his dog groomer was on there. I asked him why, and he said, "I just don't want anyone to wonder if I loved them." That's when I had to excuse myself to the bathroom because I couldn't let him see me lose it. The next day he came back with another request. He wanted to make videos for the people he couldn't see in person. So we set up this little recording station in his hospital room. For 3 days straight, this dying 12-year-old sat there making goodbye videos telling his kindergarten teacher that her hugs made him feel better when his mom dropped him off crying, thanking the librarian for always saving him the new comic books. One video was for his future brother-in-law. Emma had just gotten engaged, and Jeremy recorded this message saying he was sorry he wouldn't be there to walk her down the aisle, but he approved of her boyfriend and hoped they'd named their first kid after him. The hardest part wasn't watching him die. It was watching him plan it like he was organizing a school field trip. He had this whole schedule written out. Monday, he wanted to see his friends from school. Tuesday was for family, movie night. Wednesday, he wanted to go to the hospital cafeteria one last time because he liked their chocolate pudding. The only time I ever saw him break down was when he realized the date. His sister's 13th birthday was in 2 weeks, and he wouldn't make it. Emma had been planning this party for months, and Jeremy had promised to help her with decorations. I pulled every string I could, got the hospital to approve a party in his room. His parents brought Emma and 20 of her friends. They had pizza and that cheap grocery store cake with too much frosting. Jeremy was so weak he could barely sit up, but he helped Emma blow out her candles. 3 days later, Jeremy passed away peacefully, in his sleep. His parents were there holding his hands. But here's what broke me completely. The next morning, the hospital had to set up a special mailbox in the lobby just to hold all the letters and packages people were sending. His kindergarten teacher drove 4 hours to drop off a drawing he made for her in 2019. The librarian brought every comic book Jeremy had ever checked out. His bus driver, this tough-looking guy with tattoos covering his arms, showed up crying. With a toy school bus he'd painted yellow just for Jeremy. Emma later told me that Jeremy's last words weren't goodbye or I love you. He looked at his mom and said, "Tell them I didn't forget." Even dying. This kid was worried about other people's feelings. I'm a pediatric oncologist, and Jeremy's story stays with me every day. When he was 12 years old and his brain tumor returned for the third time, we all knew there was nothing more we could do. Most kids his age would have been terrified, angry, or questioning why fate was so cruel to them. But Jeremy was different. He carried a rare lightness even in the darkest moments. He showed up to chemotherapy with joke books, lifting the spirits of nurses during their toughest shifts. While other kids dreaded blood draws and treatments, Jeremy cracked jokes, calling himself a human juice box, keeping the mood light and hopeful. One day he asked for a private meeting in my office. He sat in the big chair, feet barely touching the floor, and pulled from his pocket a crumpled piece of notebook paper. It was a list, written in pencil with large kid handwriting. Not a bucket list of amusement parks or celebrities, but a list of people he wanted to talk to before he died. His third-grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, who taught him to read chapter books. His sister, Emma, who always stole his Halloween candy but shared her birthday cake. The school bus driver who let him sit in the front seat when other kids were mean to him. Even his dog groomer was there. I asked why those people, and Jeremy's reply was simple. I just don't want anyone to wonder if I loved them. That moment shattered me, and I excused myself to the bathroom so he wouldn't see the tears I fought to hold back. The next day, Jeremy came back with another request. He wanted to make videos for those he couldn't meet in person. Over 3 days, we set up a small recording station in his hospital room. Jeremy sat there, despite his weakness, recording heartfelt messages for his kindergarten teacher, who had comforted him when he was sad, the librarian who always saved the newest comic books for him, and many more. One particularly touching video was for his future brother-in-law. Emma had just gotten engaged, and Jeremy apologized for not being able to walk her down the aisle, but gave his blessing and made a hopeful joke about naming their first child after him. What was hardest wasn't watching Jeremy's health fade, but witnessing how meticulously he planned his final days, almost like organizing a school field trip. Monday was to be for school friends, Tuesday a family movie night, and Wednesday a final trip to the hospital cafeteria for his favorite chocolate pudding. The only time I ever saw Jeremy break down was when he realized he wouldn't live to see Emma's 13th birthday. She'd been planning a party for months and he had promised to help decorate. I pulled every string I could to get approval for a birthday party in his hospital room. Emma and 20 of her friends came, with pizza and a modest grocery store cake dripping with too much frosting. Jeremy was so weak he could barely sit up, but mustered the strength to help Emma blow out her candles. 3 days later, Jeremy passed, away peacefully in his sleep, with his parents holding his hands. But what broke me utterly was what happened next. The hospital set up a special mailbox in the lobby to collect letters and packages people sent in, from strangers deeply touched by Jeremy's story. His kindergarten teacher drove 4 hours just to drop off a drawing he'd made for her years before. The librarian delivered every comic book Jeremy had ever checked out. Even the bus driver, a tough-looking man covered in tattoos, showed up, crying, carrying a handmade yellow toy school bus he'd painted especially for Jeremy. Emma later told me that Jeremy's last words weren't "goodbye" or "I love you." Instead, looking toward their mother, he said, "Tell them I didn't forget." Even at the end, when facing death, this child thought of others, worried about how they would feel, making sure none would doubt the love he had. Jeremy taught me the fierce power of kindness, courage, and love amid unimaginable pain. He showed how the smallest hearts truly hold the biggest light, shining far beyond their years. His story stays with me every day, a constant reminder why I do this work, why every life matters, and why sometimes the greatest lessons come from the smallest souls. Story 2: I paid $46,000 for their wedding, bought them a car, and even let them live in my home. Then Mom texted, "I'd rather lose my son than lose my daughter." I read it twice, replied, "Perfect. Now pay for everything yourselves." I withdrew my help. 10 minutes ago, the doorbell rang. I didn't order anything, but the box has my name on it. My name is Daniel. I'm 31, the eldest child, the responsible one, the so-called rock of our family. But if you'd asked me last Thanksgiving who I was, I would have said something softer. I would have told you I was the guy who always showed up, who paid without being asked, who didn't mind being the background character at every family gathering. As long as everyone else was smiling, I was the one who paid for my sister's college tuition, the one who co-signed my parents' mortgage when Dad's credit tanked, the one who fixed broken sinks, bought groceries without keeping receipts, and wired money with a smiley face emoji in the memo line. I thought I was building something real with them, something unshakable. But I was wrong. It exploded on Thanksgiving, the last one I'll ever host. Everyone was gathered around the long oak table in my dining room. I'd refinished it myself 2 summers ago, sanding it down in the garage while my sister Becca drank iced lattes in the shade and scrolled through Pinterest for her wedding decor. She wanted a rustic chic theme. She didn't know what sanding really involved. The turkey was carved. The candles flickered. Everyone had their wine. And then came the toasts. It was supposed to be light, fun, a little gratitude, a little laughter. Becca clinked her glass and stood up, swaying slightly in her heels. "I just want to thank Mom and Dad," she said, glowing, "for always being there for me, for helping me and Ryan through everything this year, for being real family." There was a pause. "And of course," she added with a smirk, "Daniel, for, paying for stuff. A few chuckles, not for me." My fork froze midair. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe. I waited for someone, anyone, to add something to soften the blow, to say, "Actually, Daniel did a lot more than that." But all I heard was my mom's laugh, loud and proud. "Well, honey, what are big brothers for?" And just like that, I wasn't at my own table anymore. I was 8 again, watching Becca cry her way out of trouble while I stood in the corner, silent and blamed. I was 16, handing over my birthday money for her phone bill. 23, wiring my first bonus check to my parents so they wouldn't stress. 31, instill the walking ATM. I stood up, not in a rage, not dramatically, but it was enough that the room went quiet. "I need some air," I said. That's when Mom looked up, wineglass in hand, and said the words that started everything. "Oh, don't. Be so sensitive, Daniel. You're not the one hurt here." I stopped cold, victim. That's when I knew they didn't see me, not really. And what happened next? They never saw that coming either. You want the full story? Fine, here it is. 3 years ago, my sister Becca called me in tears. She and Ryan, her boyfriend of 6 months, were accidentally pregnant and didn't know what to do. Our parents were furious. Dad wouldn't even speak to her. Mom said she'd pray on it, which in our family was code for figure it out without us. So Becca came to me. "I just need some time, Daniel," she whispered over the phone, "just until we get on our feet." I had just moved into my first real house, a 3-bedroom place in Kirkland with a home office and a tiny backyard. I'd saved for years, delayed vacations, skipped bonuses, worked weekends. It was supposed to be my reset. Instead, it became theirs. "Of course," I said, "come stay with me." They moved in 2 weeks later, brought nothing. No crib, no dishes, no plan. Just boxes of clothes and a used air fryer Becca claimed she couldn't live without. That was the beginning. What followed was a slow, exhausting erasure of boundaries. My boundaries. At first it was temporary, then just until the baby comes, then until after the wedding, then until we save for a deposit. Except they never saved. I paid for the groceries. I covered the utilities. I even put down $12,000 for Becca's emergency C-section when their insurance fell through. Ryan said he'd pay me back. He never brought it up again. And still, I didn't complain because that's who I was in this family, the fixer. The day Ryan's car broke down, he stormed into my office mid-meeting and said, "Hey man, we're stranded. You think you can help us out with a car?" I thought he meant an Uber. I was wrong. They came back from the dealership 2 days later with a used Jeep Cherokee in my name. "My name just temporary," Becca said. "Until we refinance. You've got good credit. Why not use it?" My chest burned. I couldn't even argue. I'd already signed the paperwork, and I kept telling myself, this is what family does. But the worst part, it wasn't just the money. It was the silence that followed every time I asked for respect, like when I asked them to clean up after themselves. Ryan smirked. "You're acting like a landlord," or when I mentioned maybe setting a move-out deadline. Becca laughed. "So now you're kicking out your niece." Wow. Every time I tried to draw a line, they made me feel like the villain, like I was selfish. Cruel, my mom reinforced it. "You know, your sister's been through a lot," she'd say, voice dripping with guilt. "You're the stable one. You can help, so why wouldn't you?" But she never asked what I needed. Not when I took on a second freelance job to stay afloat. Not when I stopped dating because there was a baby crib in my guest room. Not when I started therapy to process the anxiety of coming home to 2 adults who never knocked and a baby that screamed through every Zoom call. They didn't see me unraveling because I didn't unravel loudly. I just shut down. And then came the wedding. Becca wanted a lakefront ceremony, a Bohochik barn reception, custom floral arches, a live string quartet. Price tag $46,000, Mom says. "You'd be happy to cover it," she texted. No question mark. "No, please." When I hesitated, she called. "I mean, you are walking me down the aisle," she said with a giggle. It's symbolic. You're basically giving me away. Might as well give me the day, too. I stared at the floor. My therapist's words echoed in my head. You're not their wallet, Daniel. But then Mom called. It's her only wedding, sweetie. Don't make this about money. I caved again. I paid the deposit. I sent the vendors their checks. I even covered Ryan's tux rental when he forgot. And on the wedding day, I wasn't even mentioned in the toast. I'm so grateful for my husband, Becca said, beaming, and my amazing parents who supported me every step of the way. I clapped with everyone else. And when Mom caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you," I thought for a fleeting second that maybe it was all worth it until the texts started coming in. Messages from mutual friends, distant cousins. Hey, just wondering, why didn't your name show up on the wedding website? Wait, didn't you pay for everything? Why is Ryan's uncle listed as the sponsor? Becca had left me out from her own narrative. Wasn't her brother. I was her bank. But the breaking point hadn't come yet. Not until 2 months later when I finally asked them to start looking for their own place. I said it gently, carefully. Hey, just checking in on your timeline. I can help you budget if you want, but I think it's time. Becca blinked at me. Oh, so you're done with us now, Ryan muttered. Figures. Thought it was too good to be true. And that night, the message came from Mom. A single text. No. Hello. I'd rather lose my son than lose my daughter. I read it twice and something inside me shattered. Not like glass. Not loud like bone. Clean. Final. I didn't reply right away. I sat in the dark, my phone glowing in my hand, and realized this wasn't just about Becca. This was my entire family sickness, and I'd spent my whole life feeding it. No more. I typed, one line, perfect. Now pay for everything yourselves. Then I called the bank. I revoked the Jeep registration. I shut off the utilities. I froze the wedding account. And just when I thought it was over, 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I didn't order anything, but the box on my doorstep had my name on it. And inside, something I never expected. Inside the box was a stack of wedding photos. My sister's wedding, the one I paid for. Dozens of glossy prints, smiling faces, champagne glasses, custom flower arrangements I'd written a check for, but not a single photo of me. Not one. No shots of me walking Becca down the aisle. No candid moments, no toast, no mention. There was a note tucked between the pictures written in my mother's cursive. We thought you'd want to keep these as a memory. Family is what matters most. My hands trembled. Memory. I was being left out in real time and they wanted me to frame it. I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone and opened the family group chat. The one where I'd mostly been silent for months. The one where they'd coordinated every event I funded, but never attended anything I cared about. And I wrote, since family matters most, let's talk about what this family actually looks like. Then I attached the screenshots, the $46,000 transfer for the wedding, the car lease agreement in my name, the bank receipts from their months of rent-free living, the text where Becca wrote, "You're lucky you're not married. You don't have real responsibilities." And Mom's message, "I'd rather lose my son than my daughter." I added one last sentence, "You've mistaken kindness for naivety." Then I hit send. Silence for 4 full minutes. Then came the explosion. First, Mom calling nonstop, then Becca. "What? Daniel, are you trying to embarrass me? And Ryan, this is low even for you, low for sharing the truth." I didn't reply. I wasn't done yet. I logged into the shared utility accounts and removed my payment info, called the dealership and initiated repossession. Ryan had missed 2 payments anyway, told them where the car was parked. I then logged into the wedding registry site. They had never taken it down and left a public note on my own donation. Gift withdrawn. Groom's brother not credited for financing the entire wedding. It took 2 hours for Becca to notice. She faceted me at 11:52 p.m. Mascara streaked down her face like a soap opera character. "Daniel, are you seriously trying to ruin my life?" I stared at the screen. "You already ruined mine. You said you wanted to help. I said I wanted to support my family." I cut in. "I didn't say I wanted to be used. You're so dramatic," she scoffed, and I laughed. Really laughed because that's how far gone she was. She thought this was drama. "You stole from me. I said calmly. Lied to me, gaslit me, and now you're shocked. I finally stopped funding your delusion. In the background, I heard Mum yelling, "Tell him we're done with him if he doesn't fix this." So I leaned into the camera and said, "Perfect. Be done. You've never had a problem pretending I didn't exist. Keep that energy." Then I hung up and blocked them. Every number, every account, every backup email gone, but they weren't done. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Dad, the man who'd spent a decade playing neutral while my mom pulled the strings. "Son, you're overreacting. You know your sister's sensitive. What you did, it's aggressive. Aggressive." I paid for their survival. For 3 years. I bought them a car, a wedding, a life, and now I was aggressive. No, I was awake. By the end of that week, everything changed. Becca and Ryan were served a notice to vacate legally. I consulted a lawyer. Their stay had never been formalized, which made it easier. I didn't even have to go to court. They tried guilt. They tried begging. They tried rage. Mom even left a voicemail crying. "We're family. Families fight, but they don't abandon each other." But that's exactly what they'd done to me for years. I made one last post on social media. Nothing vindictive, just honest. It's not selfish to set boundaries. It's not cruel to say no. It's not dramatic to walk away from people who only show up when they need something. I've spent my whole life confusing loyalty with martyrdom. Not anymore. Then I turned off my phone for a week, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. No buzz of guilt, no calls demanding money, no invisible weight of being everyone's savior, just silence. And in that silence, I remembered who I was before I became their safety net. They moved out on a Tuesday. No thank you, no goodbye, just a slammed door, a dented fridge, and a text from Ryan that said, "Hope life teaches you a lesson." I didn't reply. I walked through my house that night, bare walls, empty rooms, and felt something I hadn't in years, relief. The air was lighter. The silence wasn't lonely. It was mine. The guest room was no longer a nursery. The kitchen counter wasn't cluttered with takeout boxes. My fridge no longer had passive-aggressive notes about almond milk or too much garlic in the food I paid for. They were gone. And something inside me clicked. The very next morning, I rearranged my office, put up bookshelves, moved in a leather reading chair, reclaimed my space. Then I did something wild. I booked a solo trip to Iceland. 10 days, no itinerary, no family emergencies, no babysitting groan. Adults, just me, a rented Jeep, and a frozen landscape that didn't ask me for anything. I hiked volcanic cliffs, bathed in glacial lagoons, stood under the northern lights and felt for the first time in over a decade, small in a good way, not crushed, not cornered, not responsible for everyone else's disasters, just alive. While I was away, Becca texted from a new number. "Just so you know, we're living with Mom and Dad now. They welcomed us with open arms. Some families still care about loyalty." I laughed out loud in the middle of a Reykjavik cafe. Of course, she'd spin it like that. What she didn't say, that Mom and Dad were fighting, that the house was too small, that Ryan had already borrowed money from Dad and accidentally used his credit card for DoorDash. Amelia, our cousin, kept me updated. "They're cracking," she said in one message. "Now that you're out of the picture, the stress is turning inward." Apparently, when I stopped being the scapegoat, they turn on each other. Mom accused Dad of enabling Becca. Dad blamed Becca for taking advantage. Becca screamed that I'd poisoned the family. And Ryan, he vanished for a week and came back with a tattoo and a new vape business idea. The texts from Amelia became darker. "Your mom told me you're dead to her. Becca is saying you never really helped, just wanted to look like a hero. Ryan's trying to sell the Jeep on Facebook Marketplace, even though it's repossessed. They were spiraling. And I was thriving. Back in Seattle, I started dating again, joined a hiking group, got promoted at work again, bought myself a motorcycle, not because I needed it, because I wanted it. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a cog in the machine of my family's chaos. I was building my life, curating it, and people noticed. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out. One of them, Jamie, hugged me at a dinner party and said, "Daniel, you look lighter, like you finally dropped a boulder you didn't know you were carrying." I smiled because that's exactly what it was. The boulder was never mine to carry. It was everyone else's weight they dumped on me and guilt me into lifting, and I'd finally let it crash to the ground. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was free. The only time I flinched was 2 weeks ago when I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was, Mom. The letter started soft. Daniel, I've been praying for you. I hope you're doing well. The house feels empty without your voice. Then came the pivot. Becca is struggling. She's been very emotional. I know she's made mistakes, but family should forgive. And finally, the ask. We were wondering if you could help them get back on their feet. Just a little support short term. I read it twice. Then I lit it on fire, watched it curl and blacken in a ceramic bowl on my patio, and as the smoke rose into the air, I whispered, I forgive you, but I'm not coming back. A month ago, I was sitting at a rooftop bar downtown, alone, sipping bourbon, watching the sun melt into the skyline. It was my birthday. No calls, no texts, not from Mum, not from Becca, not even a fake guilt-laced Facebook post. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I didn't sit by the phone waiting. I didn't feel that old sting of being forgotten. I just watched the sky burn orange and whispered to myself, you did it. You made it out. I used to think family meant obligation, that love was proven by sacrifice, that you gave until it hurt and then gave more, but that's not love. That's servitude. And I was done being the willing prisoner in someone else's drama. People ask me if I miss them. I miss the idea of them. The idea of a mother who protected me, a sister who respected me, a family that saw me as more than what I could provide. But those were never real. What was real? The debt, the betrayal, the silence when I needed support, the manipulation dressed up as tradition, the way they smiled when I gave and turned cruel when I stopped. That was real. And I've grieved it, not like a sudden death, but like a long illness that finally took its last breath. I don't hate them. I just refuse to shrink for them anymore. Because here's the truth no one wants to say. Blood doesn't excuse abuse. Being family doesn't give anyone the right to drain you, blame you, or erase you when it's convenient. I spent 31 years being the good son, the generous brother, the quiet supporter. I thought if I just gave a little more, they'd finally see me, but they saw me the whole time. They just didn't care until I stopped. Now my life is quiet, peaceful, rooted. I've started therapy full-time, not just to process what happened, but to make sure I never repeat the pattern. I've built a new family. Friends who call to check in without needing anything. Colleagues who celebrate my wins. A partner who tells me you don't owe me the world. I just want you and that's enough. I keep a photo on my desk, not of Becca, not of my parents, not even of the wedding I funded and got erased from. It's a photo I took on my solo trip, standing on a black sand, beach in Iceland, waves crashing behind me, arms outstretched like I was catching the wind. No one else in the frame, just me smiling, free. That photo reminds me of something simple but profound. I'm not selfish, I'm not cruel. I'm someone who finally chose himself. And if that makes me the villain in someone else's story, so be it. I'm not going back into the fire just to prove I can survive the burn. I'm building a life where I don't have to constantly heal from people who claim to love me. Last week, I ran into Aunt Rachel at the grocery store. She hesitated at first like I was a ghost. Then she gave me a hug. She leaned in and whispered, I'm proud of you, Daniel. You were the only one brave enough to walk away. And for the first time I believed it. That night I journaled something that now sits framed on my nightstand. I will not be guilt into smallness. I will not carry what others refuse to own. I am not their scapegoat. I am not their savior. I am my own. 2 days ago I got an email from Ryan, a simple subject line. Hey man, I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. A half-hearted apology. A new financial emergency. A request framed as a chance to reconnect. But I'm not available anymore. Not for that version of them. Instead, I took my partner on a weekend getaway. We unplugged, laughed, drank wine by the fire. And when I told them the full story for the first time, the whole ugly, exhausting truth, they didn't flinch. They just said, you deserved better, you still do. And I believe that too. So now when someone asks for more than I can give, I'll remember the doorbell, that box with my name on it, the pictures without me, The moment I finally drew the line, and I'll say without guilt, without apology, no, not this time. Because I'm not their bank, I'm not their fixer, I'm not their sacrifice, I'm Daniel.